Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera, and we're back with another episode of Fantasy Lore and More. And today we have Eileen Mueller, and she's joining me to talk about a lot of things. So welcome, and let's get to all the things.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you
Yeah.
today?
Well, as you know, it's morning here and you're already on late evening because
Yeah.
I'm beaming to you from New Zealand, down in the South Pacific. Now, remind me, Melinda, that if I speak too fast, I have to slow down so your listeners understand me because I know I have a difficult accent.
I have a tendency to talk too fast too, but I'm from New York and that's like the norm. People complain we speak too fast. So I
Well,
might not be a good gauge of that because I don't have a problem with your accent.
New Zealanders speak incredibly fast. I traveled overseas when I was really young and on my own through Asia, which was a crazy experience back when I was 23, just last year, of course. And nobody understood me. The minute I left New Zealand, nobody understood me. So I learned to slow down and speak, enunciate my words so that everyone could understand me. But I've
That's
gotten out of
important.
the habit lately. But yeah, New Yorkers have a reputation for speaking really fast.
Mm-hmm. That's me.
Mm. And so do Kiwis. That's what we call New Zealanders. Did you know a kiwi is not actually a fruit?
Yeah, I believe it because they're weird looking.
Yeah, so kiwis are birds. Um, I'll send you a picture over so that you can pop it on your YouTube channel. But they've got their sort of feathery bodies, with of course as birds, but a head and long bill. So what we call a beak. So it's actually like about I don't know a foot long, and
Oh
they have
wow.
little nostrils at the end of their bill. And because the nostrils are at the end of the bill, their bill is you birds' bills are, or birds' beaks are measured from the nostrils to the tip. So they theoretically have the shortest beak in the world, but they
Oh
actually have the
wow.
longest one. Yeah, but they're called kiwis and they're nocturnal birds. And so New Zealanders are called kiwis after the bird because we're the only country where this bird lives. And they have this call at night that goes kiwi. So when they wanted to rebrand kiwi fruit, they used to be called Chinese gooseberries and they decided that wasn't politically correct and they came from China. So they rebranded them kiwi fruit. And now everybody thinks they're from New Zealand. There you go.
That's I never really thought about it where they came from.
Yeah.
They're very
They
weird
could just
looking
called
fruit.
kiwi. Yeah. So there you go. It's national icon. So when I tell people I'm a Kiwi, they always stare at me and think that I'm a fruit, you know.
Well, I knew
But
that Kiwis refer to people from New Zealand, so I'm one
yeah,
up on them. I did
but
know that.
not a lot of people know about the birds, which I always think is really
I
funny.
didn't know about that though. That was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Mm.
All
So what do you
right.
want to chat about today? We've had a
Well,
few
books.
ideas, haven't we? Yeah.
Definitely books. And I know you wanted to talk about your Kickstarter that's coming up. So we should definitely do that.
And I think
So
we should
where do
talk about
you
yours as well. You've got a Kickstarter that's just kicked off.
Yeah, just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for the special edition, the omnibuses for the Chris Baker series. I collected the first 9 books into 3 omnibuses, and they're got brand new covers. They're signed, and I wanted to put pretty artwork in them. So that's a stretch goal. So
Yeah.
because that gets very expensive, the
Yeah,
color
it is.
printing and all
I think
that. So
art can be quite expensive, and I think commissioning art when you've got a good artist can be expensive, and also printing it and getting color tip-in sheets put into your books can be quite expensive. But that's one of the reasons Kickstarter is such a fabulous platform. I've had a few readers ask me about why people are moving to Kickstarter and why they're seeing all of these special editions coming out. And I think as authors, a lot of us have always wanted to make special editions, but using Kickstarter is a way of doing that. So readers are pre-ordering products that will be delivered later if you meet your funding goal, which is the threshold for doing a print
yes.
run. So, printing a lot of books can be quite an expensive outlay, especially if they've got color in them.
Hmm.
And so it's a great way of teaming up because it allows us to see as authors, is there interest for this project? So you can see whether you've got enough readers interested in Cursebreaker. And I encourage your readers, if they're interested, to go and make a pledge to help you fund your Kickstarter. And once it's funded, you can add extra additional things on top. and then the books will get delivered. And the good thing, sorry, I'm ranting now.
No,
The good
go
thing
ahead.
about Kickstarter is that it's quite a short window. So instead of saying to your readers, oh, make these pre-orders over a year and we'll see whether we can fund the project, you've got a really short sort of 2 or 3 or 4 week window, depending on how long your project is, where you get to see, is this something my readers are interested in? Do I need to go back and revise, what I was thinking about this particular product? Is there a different way readers want to see it? Or is this something that's going to fly? And I think your omnibuses, you were showing them to me online before we came into the studio,
Mm.
and they look beautiful. They look absolutely gorgeous, and I think your readers will be very lucky to have a nice product that they can display on their shelves, or or read and enjoy with
Yeah.
artwork and nice things in them. Yeah.
No, I hope so. I mean, the font is a readable font and there's space between the lines. It's not like when you buy those mass market paperbacks and everything is squished down. So I hope people will read that. That's why we write. We want people to read us.
Yeah, and we want it to be accessible to people,
Yes.
who so that they can read things easily and enjoy them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why they're so long, because they wanted a readable font. Well, they're also long books. They're not short. I don't write short books.
So, who's one of your favorite characters from the Cursebreaker series? One of the characters who's been the most interesting to write for you?
Him, Sarn.
Hmm. And what do you like about him the best? What do your readers love about him?
I think he's a very interesting contrast. He's overpowered and yet very reluctant to be a mage it's in a world where magic is illegal, and his magic happens to be extremely visible. He's not someone who could work magic and you don't know it. He's can't work it without you knowing it. So
Right.
that is an interesting contrast. And he's also a single parent and is also dealing with he has a form of epilepsy, so he's sort of got like all these strikes against him. And from what I hear from readers, that's something they really like, that here's a hero, reluctant hero, which is the big trope in there, and
Mm,
but he's got this little kid who wants to be his sidekick.
right.
And there's no
Right.
childcare in epic fantasy world, so he's got to deal with, okay, I need to save the city from, the monsters that are attacking, but I need to do something with Junior, but Junior wants to come with me and help
Yeah.
to
That's so
fight the
cute.
dragon.
How old is Junior?
Junior's 4.5, so
Oh,
very
oh, what a
little.
sweet age.
Yeah.
Not the sort of
So
kid you want to drag into danger. It's not like he's your
no,
teenager.
but he does end up in there because he won't stay with the babysitters
Yeah, and
when
he'll be useful probably in the story. It'll be lots of
oh,
fun. Yeah.
oh yeah, no, he has magic too, and his magic has helped in a lot of situations. It's subtle though, so he doesn't always know it. He wants the big showy magic like his father
Mm.
has, and his father would really prefer some very subtle magic.
Yeah,
If
that's
they could
interesting
switch, they
too.
would be very happy, but they can't. I mean, like that.
That's fantastic. It sounds like you've got a
Yeah.
real sort of not necessarily an underdog, but like you said, someone with strikes against them in society and
Yeah.
with a disability, and also with a kid in tow. That sounds like a
Yes.
lot of fun. Yeah. And you said something about slaying the dragon.
Mm.
Oh
Well,
dear.
no, there's no dragon slaying. The dragons that he's met have been friendly. I mean, if they did, there was some growling and there was some tense moments, but well, there's still some growling and some very tense moments coming up, and I hope they're all gonna end up as friends, but
No spoilers.
characters
No spoilers.
characters don't do what I say, so that I mean, the outline says they become allies, but who the hell knows if that's what's gonna end up happening. So,
Lots of fun.
I hope
So, for
so.
those of you who can't see because you're not watching YouTube, I'm wearing dragon horns and bright coloured dragon wings and have
They're so
multicolored
cool.
hair. Yeah, so my hair's sort of like rainbow coloured. And it's an experiment every time we dye my hair because we never know quite how it's going to turn out. So, it's always interesting. But so, in my world, the dragons are not the foes, they're the friends. And the dragons, so it's in, so I should probably say what my books are called. So, I've got the Riders of
Yes.
Fire series and the Riders of Fire Dragon Masters series. And Riders of Fire are 6 books that I wrote between 2018 and it took me 3 years, so probably 2021, I think. I finished them in 2020. And then from 2021, I've been writing the prequel series, which I know you talk about annoying characters that sort of take off
Mhm.
and do things you don't expect.
Yes.
So in the Riders of Fire series, and I'll show you, they're all lined up behind me in my office. But the first book is Azara. There's a sticker on there with a bunch of kids flying a magic carpet. Now, that is actually a young adult literary award that I received in New Zealand, but it's also an award that's given to children's books sometimes. So both of my first two books, Azara and the story and Dragon Hero, which you can't see that clearly because it's shining, won Storylines Literary Awards in New Zealand for young adult excellence in young adult literature. So
that's so
that
cool.
was quite cool. Yeah, they're called Storylines Notable Book Awards. And then the third book there is Dragon Rift. And I've got a couple more up on my shelf there, which is Dragon Strike, Dragon War, and Sea Dragon. So there's 6 books in that series. So the first 3 books are coming out in an omnibus in the Kickstarter. That's a big fat omnibus. It's like 800 pages long. And on the Kickstarter, we're doing a faux leather edition with, the aim is gold sprayed edges, color illustrations. So cool. I've got artists working on sketches at the moment, so there'll be some illustrated sketches. And the Riders of Fire premise is a young girl, Azara, who isn't even sure whether dragons exist because she lives in a valley called Lush Valley, and the catchphrase of the series is, in Lush Valley it's a crime to even talk about dragons. And so Azara doesn't even know.
Wait. Why is it a crime to talk about dragons in that valley?
So
did some dragon piss somebody off?
So it did, but that all comes out in my second series, so I'll show you those as well. You've got Anakisha's dragon. So what happened is I wrote Riders of Fire and Dragon Hero. I wrote a 223,000 word book back in 2009, and I didn't launch these until 2018, right? So it took me 9 years because I didn't know how to write when I first started. I mean, I thought I did, and I thought my book was great, and I gave it to friends for feedback, and they were like, yeah, cool. And one of my friends said, I love it. When's the next one? Which was amazing because those words kept me writing through the 18 revisions I did of that novel, through writing several other novels, through forming critique groups. One of our critique members has won, I think, 4 Bram Stoker Awards since then. So we really taught each other how to hone our books. We thrashed through, I think, between 35,000 to 50,000 words a month of each other's work. I was in 3 critique groups, and that's what I did all month long, was get other people's work, read it, critique it. We all did writing courses and looked online and learned lots of editing techniques. So by the time we actually, all of us, launched our books, we all did really well, and most of us have won awards because we were tough. It was terrible. There were so many tears in those critique groups.
I've never been part of any of those, so I've heard they can be rough.
It was great though, because we were all best friends and we all got to know each other really well, which is great now. So we became friends through the critique group. But anyway, so I wrote, and I was actually writing an urban fantasy series when one day I ran out of scenes to give people because we'd gotten as far as I'd written. So I dragged this old dragon scene out and sort of flung it at people and said, oh, look at that this month. And they loved it. And a couple of them said, you've got to publish this. You have to publish this.
That's
so
awesome.
I did. And the series took off. I hit Amazon at a really good time, and there were a few dragon authors out there, and it just took off and did really well. So I decided to write the prequels. And I've got Anakisha's dragon, Dragon Mage. I'll just show you the first 3 because there's a bunch more as well. Dragon Pirate, which I sort of love that.
Yeah,
and then
love
there's
that
a few
cover.
more. Yeah, and Master Mage is really big. That's the 4th book up there with the red dragon. You probably can't see it. But that book really surprised me because it's like about 700 pages long on its own. It's 177,000 words, and it's riveting. My readers loved it.
So what about it surprised you? Is it the length or something the characters did in the book?
So I think the thing that surprised me is I wrote Riders of Fire and I got the whole series together, and I thought, now I'll go and write the backstory. So I'm writing the prequels. Now, if anyone's ever done this, it is so difficult when you've already written the future and everything's nailed and it's all tied down.
Yep.
And the personalities exist, and you've got hints of dark things in people's past, and then you go to write that past, and you realize you're going to tie yourself in knots.
Yep. And
trying to make sure all the timelines work, and the characters suddenly want to do something
don't cooperate. they
Yep.
want to do other things. Yeah, I have a couple of prequels that I started, and they're just sitting there and waiting because for that
So
reason.
Dragon Mage,
It's
yeah. So
hard.
Dragon Mage, this story. Oh, well, I'm jumping all over the place, right? Is that
That's
okay?
fine.
So Dragon
Yeah.
Mage, the second book in Riders of Fire, Dragon Masters, which is a prequel, and we'll get to the Kickstarter in a tick because I was supposed to talk about that. Dragon Mage wasn't even supposed to exist, but I had made one of the mages in Riders of Fire old and wrinkly, right? But
Hmm.
when I went to write Riders of Fire Dragon Masters, I realized, oh, he should actually be about the same age, just a little bit older than the actual mage he's training. And so I realized, well, why would his face be old and wrinkly then? So we invented this whole, I got my critique group together. I'm like, oh, I've got this issue. And we all sat down together and we brainstormed reasons why this guy's face may look old and wrinkly. And then I wrote the story based around that fact. And it was
Oh
supposed to be a
wow.
couple of chapters at the beginning as to why this guy looked older. And I won't tell you why, but my readers will crack up when they hear this because they want to have no idea that that's what went on behind the scenes. But they go off and have this massive adventure. It was supposed to be a couple of chapters, but by the time I finished those chapters, they were 80,000 words long.
Oh
And I realized
wow.
I had a standalone story about Dragon Mage Master Giddy when he was young. So that covers his childhood. And then the Master Mage chapter, the Master Mage book, which is book 4, that actually encapsulates his adult life, but it's like a 21 year time span from the time he's like, no, it's not, it's 15 years, I think. But anyway, until he's 31. Yeah, so you have a few months in book 2, and then you have, and there's a lot that happens in the world during that time.
I believe
So
it.
none of my books are about one character. They're all multi point of view, big epic sprawling plots that take you off in various directions depending on what all the characters are doing, and they all mesh up and tie in together. Yeah, I've had a wee rant. So,
No, it's fine. It's no, you've got a lot of books and a lot of cool characters.
no,
That's what happens.
the question you asked me was about Lush Valley. So we know in Riders of Fire with Azara that and Dragon Hero, both of those books start in Lush Valley, and they both start with a dragon swooping in and taking Azara away. And so the first book, Azara, is from her perspective as to she meets this dragon, they bond. So imprinting bonds are huge in my books, where dragons and humans experience a magical bond where they can have telepathy, where they enhance each other, and there's a synergy that comes from them working together. And the dragons in Dragon's Realm protect the realm from danger. And they do things like catch dragon egg smugglers and, catch criminals and do things like that. But in Azara's world, there's been a world gate opened and there's monsters that have come in from a dystopian Earth. Not that they know that in the book, but, they've come through from another world and there's all these monsters there. Now, going back to Dragon Masters, to the prequels, I had to establish reasons for why. Why did these people not like dragons? And there's one or two lines I put in Azara's book, or actually, and they come out a little bit more in Dragon Hero. That's the story of her twin brother Tamaz, who gets left behind, and how he realizes his parents have been living a double life, and they were once, no spoilers, but they were once leading a whole different life, and they came to Lush Valley because there were no dragons there and they're hiding. His mother's
Oh.
a criminal.
Oh wow. That's wow.
Well, sort of not intentionally a criminal. She did something that resulted in the death of a dragonette. And so she fled from the Dragon Queen, and then the Dragon Queen comes back years later to pick up Azara and fly off with her. So it's sort of tit for tat. Having said that, so establishing the reason as to why Lush Valley is a place
Mhm.
where you can't talk about dragons, there's some bad history where someone's grandfather, the leader of the village, his
Mhm.
grandfather was killed in battle as a dragon rider.
Oh.
And as I was writing those prequels, I found some amazingly heartbreaking ways for that to happen that have impacted one of the characters' lives, and you sort of see that even in the sequels. There's a cynical, jaded Master Giddy is a cynical, jaded mage, and you'll just see lots of reasons as to why we put him into torturous situations where he gradually loses a bit of faith in life.
Wow.
He's lovely. He's one of my readers' favorite characters. Like they love all the heroes, the heroines, but they love this old mage who's just really cynical and a bit snarky, and but has a heart of gold and is always on the side of justice. So he's quite cool. Yeah. Right. So I've gotten totally off track there. Yeah. So my Kickstarter is the first 3 books, which is Azara, Dragon Hero, and Dragon Hero and Dragon Rift there. And that's for a faux leather omnibus with, as I said, gold sprayed edges and all the bells and whistles. So, and that will be launching soon. At the moment, people can follow it if they go to they look for Riders of Fire or for Eileen Mueller, which is Mueller, Mueller, as all the Americans say. Then on Kickstarter, then they can follow that project and and see all the exciting art and things as we reveal it.
That's
So
really cool.
those monsters that came through the World Gate, they're called Tharuks. And I've never had art of Tharuks apart from a kid doing entering one once in a drawing competition for the series. But most people
That's
entered.
cool that you had
Yeah.
competitions like that.
Yeah, it was fun. We had a few entries, and all from kids, and that was lots of fun. But now we've got an artist doing real art of a Tharok, and it's so exciting to see that coming to life behind the scenes. So my readers will be quite excited to see those illustrations in the omnibus. There you go. I finished my rant now. Over to you. So what have I done? I've plastered the wall with books. Oh, and the silly thing was that Riders of Fire Dragon Masters was supposed to be 4 books long. And the series is now planned at 9.
Oh, wow. How many are
And
out now?
5 of
There's
those are
5.
out.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
And there's an omnibus with this gorgeous art from Joe Requisa. Actually, I'll ping you a picture. You can pop one of those up because you'll see it, which is sort of like painted art. It's absolutely beautiful. So Joe's the one drawing the Tharoks for me. And hopefully,
Wow.
if the Kickstarter goes really well, we might be able to fund some coloured art for the end pages or something like that. So to add in. So
That's so cool when you can get the colored end pages. I
yeah.
wanted them for mine, but they were like, you need a print run for that.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to do
So
a big, and it's got to be a big print run. It's got to
yeah,
be
that's
worth.
the thing. And like I wanted the leather and the foiled edges and the sprayed edges and all that, but you need a print run for that. And
Yeah.
this is a tester to see what the interest is.
Yeah, so that's one of the good things about Kickstarter is that you can test your market and you can see, see what your readers want and see what they're happy to support. And sometimes things don't fund, and that doesn't mean it's not a good product. It can mean that the timing's not right, that maybe your readers are already financially committed for Christmas or, or for holidays or whatever they're doing. Vacation is what you guys call them for vacations. Holidays is British.
I mean, there are a lot of holidays coming up in the US.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys are big into holidays, like you're big,
Oh
Thanksgiving
yeah, I
and
mean, yep, we've got the Thanksgiving weekend
Halloween.
where we get 2 whole days off for work.
That's fabulous. I wish we had one of those.
Yeah, we don't get a
And
day off for Halloween. We should, but we don't. That would be fun.
I was in LA once on Halloween, and
Oh,
it was
really?
crazy. We had to get to the airport to come back to New Zealand, and
Don't come to
somebody
New
said,
York for Halloween. It's like
allow 6
crazy.
hours.
Yeah, because they do the parades and stuff.
It was
It's a
just
whole
crazy.
thing.
Just the whole motorway. What do you call it? Highway? You don't say motorway. You say
I
highway.
think they're freeways in
Freeways, yeah.
California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the whole freeway was blocked up, and it was just like we were trying to get to the airport, trying not to miss an international flight. And yeah, so we left about 3 in the afternoon to make sure we got there on time. It was crazy. Yeah, it took us a couple of hours.
I can believe it.
Yeah. So yeah, no dragons at Halloween though. Oh, there are actually a lot of people put dragons on their houses and things over there for Halloween, don't they?
I know. I don't know about for Halloween. I know the New York Renaissance Fair. There's always somebody in an articulated dragon outfit.
Yeah.
Every year that I've gone, anyways. But that's in the summer.
Yeah. So that's our winter, isn't it, down here? Your summer. So the
we're heading
Renaissance
into
fairs here are
winters.
tiny. They're very small. Yeah.
Yeah. Then the New York Renaissance Fair, I think, is the biggest. I'm not sure if the one in Texas is bigger. So I'll let people fight that out in the comments. I've not been to the one in Texas, so I can't say.
I get so excited when I see all these things happening in the States because our population here is tiny. Like it's smaller than what you'd have in a city for the entire country.
Oh,
um,
wow.
and so yeah, I see all these cons and all these amazing, events and see authors doing all these signings and things. And I think, yeah, we have a couple of those here each year. And some of them you can go to and the stand might cost you just as much as you make. So it's sort of like a lot of work for, but, and sometimes you can go and make an absolute hit and sell a lot of books and it's sort of really worthwhile. But it's a very small market in New Zealand. So I think most of the indie authors I know, we all focus on our overseas market. And I have some of my books here stocked in stores in New Zealand, and I used to push them really actively, but at the moment I mainly focus on my international readers, which is where everybody is. So.
I mean, I
But the
love all my
Renaissance
readers.
fairs, yeah, I know, I love
I
all of
have
my
a
readers. I just
lot
think,
of readers in Australia and Canada and the
oh,
UK,
that's
and
really
I love
cool.
you all.
Yeah,
And the ones in the
yeah.
US. But lately I've seen a lot of sales coming through from there. So yeah. So I just find that
Yeah.
interesting that
I know I get sales from all around the world, but I used
Mm,
to push my books in bookstores here really, really hard, and now I don't. I just focus on, my books are still in some of the stores, but I haven't done. I used to do print runs of each of my books and get them all stocked in the stores, but I haven't done that with my second series. So it's mainly my first series in the stores, and they're still selling, but it's just that my main focus has the market's so much bigger out of New Zealand than what it
that's
is in
true.
New Zealand. Yeah. And especially the fantasy market. I mean, there's a lot of
Yes.
fantasy readers here. I love all my readers and I absolutely love meeting people who recognize me. It's very, very cool. That happened to me. I was in this, would you believe this? I was in the States going to the 20 Books Vegas conference in 2019, and I got onto a plane and there was a real issue trying to find a seat. Um, and which is weird. I know, not trying to find a seat. I had my seat, but I couldn't find anywhere to put my luggage. And in New Zealand, everyone's really strict about how much carry-on luggage you can bring on. You're allowed 7 kilos, and that is it. One bag. And I was here stepping over bags in the aisles, which would never be allowed on our domestic flights because they'd see it as a hazard, and trying to find somewhere to put my bag. And I knew that if they just rearranged the luggage up above me, um, like if someone moved a couple of bags over, that I could fit my bag in. But I didn't really want to be pushy about that because it was other
Mm.
people's stuff. So the attendant made me go all the way down the end of the plane looking for somewhere to put my bag. And I couldn't find anywhere. It was full. And then I came all the way back up and I had to step over people and it was just
Oh
crazy. Like I
no.
was trying over luggage and sort of like one guy had his legs in the aisle. I was stepping over
Oh,
them and
always.
and then they made me go down twice. And I was like, oh my goodness. It was crazy. And when I got back up to the seat, I sat down, I was chatting with with the people in the seat. I knew one of them and then another woman and she's like, oh, you write books. And we were talking about books. And then so everybody in the plane got to see me, right? And I was the crazy woman with the rainbow hair. And we were flying to Utah from Las Vegas. I was going to see some friends in Utah. And so it was they would like, oh, who is this mad lady? And I was just like, oh, can I cringe and go and hide in the front seat? So I sat down with my friends. And when I got up to leave, I stood up and Mark Dawson and James Blatch from the self-publishing
Oh, wow.
podcast. Yeah. I'd met them in Vegas and James had given me, one of the fans had come up and given me this hat, a cap, which says writers are hot on it. And I was wearing the cap. So it said writers are hot. And they'd had a podcast discussion with an author, and this author and them had come to the conclusion that writers were hotter than normal people. And so this fan who'd listened to it had 3 hats made. One for Mark, one for James, and one for the author. Now, I don't know who the author was because no one told me. I didn't hear that episode. But in the end, they decided on the spot they would give me the cap instead of the author. So
Oh,
here I
wow.
was
Just
wearing
because you
this
were
cap.
there?
Yeah, I
Oh,
was just there
wow.
at the right time. And I was, I'll pose with the dragon and take a photo because I was wearing dragon wings. So I was sitting in the plane and I turned around to get my luggage. And one of the people that the attendant had actually asked to rearrange their luggage to fit my tiny bag up in the little spot. She
Right.
stood up and she said to me, I know you. I've read your books. You're a writer. And she got so excited. And
That's
so
so
next thing,
cool.
as we got off the plane, she was getting the stewardess to take all these photos of me posing with her. And all these people that had seen this mad, crazy woman going up and down the plane and had looked quite judgmental about who I was were like, oh, she's somebody. She's not just this mad, crazy woman, which cracked me up. What are the chances of me, a little old New Zealander, coming to the States and meeting a reader on a plane?
That's so
They're
cool.
minuscule. I just couldn't. I
Yeah,
was like, how is it? How, so I guess my point is your readers are everywhere. You never know where you're going to meet them. And
that's
I've just told
true.
this another big, long, rambling story. I'm sure, I get to edit my books. They're a lot tighter than the way
Mm.
I speak.
That's fine. I think podcasts are supposed to be a bit rambly, like all the ones I've listened to are.
It's human nature, isn't it? So, this
Yeah,
reader is in my Facebook group and we chat and, we've messaged each other a few times and I keep up with her and see where she's at. She often travels to Hawaii to see her family there. And yeah, it was just wonderful, a wonderful opportunity to meet someone. So you never know,
that's
where you
true.
go, who you're going to meet. And because my hair is quite a distinctive color, it's sort of easier for people to recognize me.
Mm,
Yeah. So there you go. And you never know what country your readers are in either. Like
that's
you said,
true.
we have readers all around the world. And I would love just to go and travel and meet them all. It would be really cool.
So would I. That'd be very cool. Although I'm an introvert, so I'd probably I'd probably hide.
Yeah, I'm one of those rare people who's an extrovert and an author. I love people. Yeah. Hokey doke. So where are we at now? Did you have some other things you wanted to chat about?
I mean, I think we were going to talk about Ankisha's dragon.
Hmm. So in the Riders of Fire series, Anakisha
Oh, that's how you pronounce it.
was, yeah,
I'm just like
Anakisha.
wondering because I've only
Yeah,
ever
it's
seen it
interesting, isn't
spelled
it? So
out.
that's her. If you've got YouTube, you better see that, but not on the podcast. So she's riding a big dragon that has scales of all different colors. And I always imagined the dragon looking something like, how, when you get titanium and it has sort of lots of
Oh
different
yeah, yeah,
sheens of colors
yeah.
on it, or
That
like all the
rainbow sheen.
colors that, yeah, like rainbow sheen, or all the colors that come through a prism in the sunlight, or like when you have a soap bubble and you have
Mm.
lots of different colors reflected on it. That's how I imagined Zarusha, the dragon queen, looking, which is sort of why my costume has sort of rainbow colors on it. Um, and the artist has sort of put, I said to him, can we make every single scale lots of shimmering rainbow colors? And he's like, technically not yet. This is back years ago. It would have taken him hours to color those scales. So instead, the dragon represented on the book just sort of has bands of color on it, sort of not symmetrical, but just sort of, different colors. So her name's Zarusha. And in the Riders of Fire series, with Azara and her brother Tamaz and the whole Lush Valley scenes where it starts off where dragons are illegal. In that series, you hear about Anakisha, who was the last Queen's Rider, and how there hasn't been a Queen's Rider for 18 years. And the Dragon Queen has never found anyone fit to be her rider. And so I had to go back and write the prequel story about Anakisha. And I think the interesting thing is that when we put a note about characters who passed on or characters who aren't around anymore in a book, we don't have that character. We might have a few preconceived notions about what they're like, but we don't have that character fully fleshed.
No.
Like you have, oh, that was a character. That was a friend, or she was a former Queen's Rider, and okay, she was great and she did all this stuff. And so when I came to write the story, she came out a lot more naive and simplistic at the beginning of the series than what I would have expected. And one of the things about Anakisha's dragon is, as I was writing this story, there was another character that just gets mentioned in Riders of Fire called the Scarlet Hand, who
Oh,
was
that's a cool name.
yeah, the Scarlet Hand. I ask my readers to name things all the time, to name characters and people, and there's actually an opportunity in the Kickstarter to do that as well, where you can name a dragon, a rider, or a mage. But I often ask my readers to name characters, and I put a shout out, and I loved that name when it came in, but it happened to be another author who named him.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So do you know Alicia Canadian
So,
author
yeah.
who wrote Dragons Rising. Yeah, she named him, which
Yeah.
I thought was hilarious. So the Scarlet Hand turns up in Azara's, in Riders of Fire, right near the end of the book in the war, but you don't actually see him. And then they realize it might not actually be his ship that's attacking them, but it's one of his fleet. So the Scarlet Hand was just this background sort of name, but no one you didn't actually ever see him. So I had to include him in the prequels as well, right? So Anakisha's dragon alternates between her story and the story of a young lad trying to scheme and I don't know if you know the word a grifter. It's a British
Mm,
word. It's someone
I
who
know
likes to
the
scam
word.
people and make a little
Mhm,
bit of money on the way. So he
mhm.
doesn't see himself as that. He just knows he's got a starving sister at home, and his mother's really, really ill and hasn't been able to do laundry for people for a month or so because she's so ill and she's bedridden. So he's off trying to make money in the marketplace, and he has like 2 coppers left, and he's trying to do what he calls trading up, which is getting something of more value for something of less value that he gives, right? So he is scamming people, but he does all these wonderful things and he gets rewarded and does these things, and then he is press ganged onto a pirate ship with his friend. They go in to gamble and try and get some money, and they get clonked on the head and they disappear.
Oh,
So the whole
no.
story of Anakisha's dragon, she works in a tavern called the Dancing Dragon, and her father owns a tavern, and she's got a young sister, and her brother has been murdered um, by a street gang. And she goes out every night. She sneaks out of her window, climbs around along the windowsill and along the bricks and things, or the stone on the outside of the tavern, and drops down into the backyard and goes out and fights. She's a vigilante, so she goes out and fights
Oh,
the
wow.
street gang. And there's a few people in her little vigilante gang. They're called the Nightwings, and they go out and they try and get justice on the people who've harmed people. And the leader of that gang is the village arbitrator. So that's the village leader, the village arbitrator's son. And he is golden haired and dreamy eyed. And she just thinks he is wonderful. And so at the beginning of the book, she's in the tavern. There's there's a mage who's a little bit, what's the right word? Approaches her in an inappropriate manner. And as she's sneaking out, he chases her down an alley and she ends up getting away from him, goes off to fight. But at the end of the evening or in the middle of the night, um, there's an onyx dragon that flies overhead. The gang sees the dragon and runs, and she is left unconscious in an alley. So she's lying there unconscious, and the dragon rider swoops in, and he's the king's rider. So he rides King Sion, the Onyx Dragon,
Yeah.
right? And he's been told, go have a look at Fieldhaven. There's something going on there. He's supposed to be there for a tournament, for an archery tournament. And he's just like, do I have to go to this tournament in this little town? And do I really have to be there? And oh my goodness, all these duties as a king's rider. Can you still hear me? Just
Mhm.
had my
Yeah.
okay, my computer just made a funny sound. I didn't know if my sound had gone off.
No, I can
So
still hear you.
yeah, and his history is that he was a pig farmer.
Oh,
He was
wow.
he was a pig farmer who had been bullied most of his life for farming pigs, right? For, living in the sty, and he didn't live in the sty, but everybody gave him a hard time in his village. And then he happened to meet this onyx dragon and imprint with the dragon and become the king's rider. And the dragon is always giving him a hard time. The dragon scion is really funny. He has an extensive vocabulary because he's lived for many years. So he's always teasing Yanir about, oh, you could say that a little bit better, or what about this word, and using big
Oh, wait,
words
wait.
that Yanir
So
doesn't understand.
so dragons have more than one riders because they live for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. So
I
when
thought so because
Anakisha, yeah,
you mentioned the Zarusha having
yeah,
Anakisha and
and
then
then later
another and
Azara,
then
yeah.
Azar.
But there's a
Okay, go
massive
on, sorry.
twist. No, just as an aside, I probably shouldn't
Sure,
tell you
sure.
because it's a spoiler. There is a massive twist in Riders of Fire at the end where you actually find out what happened to Anakisha and Yania. So everybody, that's all I can say is that, the legend is they died in battle. Everybody saw it happen. And then later on at the end of Riders of Fire in Sea Dragon, which was a complete afterthought book, it's just a side story that also spans it's a side story that spans the entire series. Um, from a little assassin that Azara and Roberto met when they were captive somewhere. I can't give away too many spoilers. And this assassin helps him get free. And it's her story because she swoops in at the end of the war to help save the day. So in the massive war at the end of Riders of Fire, you think, oh, these people are going to help, and then these people are going to help, and these people are going to help. And every single time it doesn't work. Like all these people come charging in and you get this breath of hope, and then that goes wrong, and then this goes. It's like the entire book is one war. And I remember my readers saying, how could you keep track of all the characters? And I just had this map in my head of where all the characters were and what was happening. And because by the end of the book, I have over 50 points of view throughout the series. And by the end of the book, all the players come together in the war. And keeping track of all of that was just, I don't know how I did it. But
wow.
And you read it and it's seamless. Like someone flies in here and then you cut to here, and it's like a movie that all these different scenes are just happening, and then by the end the whole thing wraps up. But I leave a few threads undone, and then when Sea Dragon, you get her perspective of how she trains from being an unwanted disabled assassin who her mother can't stand, her mother's a chief prophetess, to riding in at the end in the war to, I'm giving away too many spoilers, to try and help save the day.
I'm
and
not going to stop you. I enjoy the spoilers. I'm not going to lie.
But
that's the bonus of my job as a podcast host. I get all the spoilers.
All these authors that blat things out because they get keen about their worlds.
You notice I'm not stopping you.
Yeah, I know. Spoiler. So
I'm enabling the spoilers.
And a lot of people read Dragon War and read the first 5 books and get to Dragon War. And at the end of Dragon War, I have all these teasers for spin-off series. I was like, I'm going to write 5 spin-off series because I'm just crazy, right? I'm probably going to write them 5 books all in one spin-off series. But so I have all these little teasers. It's called, the last chapter is called After the War. And then you see all the main characters and you see little teasers of 3 months later, 2 months later, 6 months later, a year later, 3 years later, and 6 years later. And then you see all these different things happening with all the different characters' lives. And I will go and write those stories because they're already forming in my head. But Sea Dragon comes after that. So people feel like the series is finished, but when you read Sea Dragon, you get to discover all of these things that weren't resolved, and you don't even realize they weren't resolved until you read Sea Dragon like I saved a few things for later, and readers would never have guessed it. They probably would have forgotten about those little things, but they all come out, and you see a wonderful story of 2 brave young women at different ends of the realm who end up meeting each other and helping make a huge impact. And, they're both alone. They've got nobody in the world. And by the end of the book, you discover how many people in the world they actually have. And there are like family relationships that some of them never knew about, and just the found friends and the camaraderie. So hang on, we spun miles away. We were talking about Yanir. So that's sort of Zarusha, Anakisha, Azara, how that all fits in. So a dragon can imprint with more than one rider, but not at the same time. So if a rider dies, I mean, I know a lot of lore is that if a dragon dies, or if a rider dies, the dragon dies too. But it's not like that in my world. The dragons can survive, and in fact,
I believe it. I've read. I think it's not always a given that the dragon will die. I feel like there was a Pern book where there was where the rider died and the dragon didn't.
Oh, it was
Or vice
Aragon.
versa.
Aragon did that with Brom. Yeah. So
maybe that's it.
So he killed.
I read too many books.
So Aragon's mentor Brom killed. I can't remember the name of him. Someone can put it in the comments. But he killed a dragon rider, and in doing so, the last dragon in the realm died, or something like that. One of the last. Yeah, he ended up killing the last dragon of that generation, and so there was Aragon with an egg, and that was the next generation of dragons. No, it wasn't the last dragon. There were only so many dragons left. It was one of the last dragons. So he killed someone out of revenge, and his dragon ended up dying, which was a horrible guilt burden for him to bear. Yeah. So I feel like sometimes Master Giddy is a little bit like Brom out of Aragon. That only just occurred to me now, because Brom was cynical and jaded and knew a lot and had been a lot of places and made a lot of mistakes, and he was mentoring Aragon. And just thinking about those parallels now, Master Giddy is a little bit like that. But writing his young story is actually really nice, having him as a sweet youngster growing up, but the most incredible, powerful mage in the realm. He's a dragon mage, so he can speak to any dragon, and he has telepathy with people, which is he's the only person in the realm that can do that. And so every now and then people are, there's a scene where people are just doing something and a voice pops in their head and it's him interrupting, going, you better not do that, and they look around and they realize, oh, it's true, he can,
Oh, that's
yes,
wild.
that leads for some fun. So heading back to Anakisha's dragon, so Yanni is flying in, sees this girl knocked unconscious and ends up, so one of my little catchphrases is the last thing Yanni, rider of King Sion, giant onyx dragon, expected when he visited a field haven was an unconscious girl in his arms after midnight, and that's exactly what happens to him. He's wandering around the streets with this unconscious girl, wondering, where do I take her? Who is she?
Mm.
And she's Anakisha. But Anakisha's really stubborn. She ends up, she doesn't want a dragon. She thinks Yanni is arrogant. She enters the archery tournament and she's been secretly training with her brother before he died. He was a bit of a fighter. So she'd been secretly training with him and she had been practicing archery since his death. Every day she sneaked out early in the morning and went and practiced archery out in the field. And it's where the tournament field is. And so when she's unconscious, her father forbids her, you've had a knock on the head, you're not allowed to go. And besides, everybody comes to this tournament from all around. The tavern's going to be too busy. I forbid you from going. And of course, what does she do? She sneaks out. Yeah. But she ends up hating Yanni because for several reasons.
No.
So it's an interesting journey. And then alternating with that, you have the journey of Will. So the whole book alternates. You've got Will, who's found himself on a pirate ship with this bunch of cutthroat pirates, and he has to go off on a mission to steal a dragon egg if he wants to stay alive. And he doesn't want to steal a dragon egg, but that's the only thing that keeps him alive, is that he's found out the location of a dragon egg from a beggar in the marketplace when he's trading. And he ends up trading and finding some fancy boots with dragons on the side of them, and that's why the pirates kidnap him, because the captain wants his boots. Captain's a bit of a dandy.
Wow.
And the boots just happen to fit the captain. Anyway, so he ends up, with his friend on the ship, kidnapped. And so the whole series alternates. I didn't expect that when I started writing it, that Riders of Fire Dragon Masters, the prequel series, alternates between pirates, dragons, and mages. Pirates, dragons, and mages, dragon riders and mages. And it just goes back and forth the whole way through. So you've got, the first book has both in it. Dragon Mage is all about the mage, Mage Giddy. And then you've got a pirate book, Dragon Pirate, and then it flips back to Master Mage, which has rumors of pirates in the south, but you don't actually see what's happening. And then Dragon Captain, which is my latest release, which is a girl who was kidnapped by the Scarlet Hand onto his ship, and he killed her uncle in front of him, sort of in a twisty sort of way. The Scarlet Hand is not all he's made out to be. Like, everybody thinks he's terribly cutthroat and an awful guy, but you get insights into him. I've had a reader say, how did Eileen Mueller make me love the villain?
Oh, wow.
And he is such an understandable guy. Like, he makes bad choices because of the situations he gets into, but his heart is not actually bad, but because he's surrounded by cutthroat pirates, he needs to keep that tough exterior. And you just keep seeing this, and every decision he makes compounds. One bad thing spirals into another. So he kidnaps this girl, and Dragon Captain is about her getting revenge after she's escaped, getting revenge on him, and what happens there. I don't know. Do you have a lot of romance in your books?
No.
No, right. Okay.
Not really. I like reading the action and adventure.
Yeah.
Although the latest book there is some, but yeah, we'll see. I'm there
So
for
I
the
think
action
mine
and
have a
adventure. If there's
yeah,
romance,
yeah.
it's accidental. It's not.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas I have a lot. I have romance in my books. They're the subplots and behind everything. And so there's a couple of books. Sea Dragon doesn't, because the protagonist is a lot younger. And Dragon Mage doesn't, because Giddy's really young there. But apart from that, all of my books have, strong romantic subplots. And it's not just between one couple. Like, there's all sorts of couples all over the place finding each other, which is quite neat. So Dragon Captain has a bit of, romance in it as well, even though I think the last thing the Dragon Captain expected was to feel romantic about someone she wanted to kill. So there's a little spoiler. But that leads for
Wow.
really fun. Yeah. So there's some
That's
real
interesting.
fun. Yeah, huh? And yeah, but my readers loved it. They're like, "Oh my goodness, it was really good," Yeah, it's quite funny the emails you get when you put a book out, and I don't know, like a lot of people plot using the hero's journey. Where you have the reluctant
Mhm.
hero and then he takes on a mission. And I think I use that very loosely, but I have so many characters jumping in from the side scenes that things are never straightforward. And there's always twists that people don't expect. Um, and my readers are always surprised by the way that my books go. And I think that's why they like reading them, is because it's not formulaic. I plot the ending before I start and the first third of the book, and the middle is just by the time I get halfway through the first third, I know what's going to be happening in the rest of the book. But how it happens and the way it happens is always surprising as I write. Do you have that? Do you have like crazy ideas that just pop into your head in the middle of writing and characters
Yeah.
telling you to do stuff?
Oh, of course. I mean, I test start out each book with like 10 things that characters need to do, and if I get through half of them, I'm happy. I usually know at the beginning where we start. I am the middle. We discover the end is always a mystery. They never end where I think they're going to. I've
Right.
been
Whereas I
wrong about
always
the
know,
end of
yeah.
every book.
Yeah, I always know the ending of my books before I start, and it helps me drive the action towards the end. I love action. I love books with lots of adrenaline. I think I'm an adrenaline junkie, and so writing those makes it it makes it really good
No,
fun.
no, that's cool. But yeah, I also like the interaction, like I read a lot of found family and actual family, and I like a lot of that, like the interpersonal stuff with that, with dealing with, I don't know, I like that. So I have a lot of the
Emotions.
action, but I
Yeah.
have a lot of that interpersonal thing dealing with like people that, not really romantic situations, but like I do have like married couples. There are people who are dating, but there's like a lot of friendship and dealing with like people that are mentoring you or people that you work with, or dealing with
Mm,
the fact you're a single parent, dealing with your child, but you're also raising your teenage brother, and like the interactions between all of that.
mm.
Um, I like all that. I don't
I
know.
think it's
I
fascinating,
have
isn't
very
it? Because
complicated interpersonal relationships in books.
yeah, that's good. That's good. I
Yeah,
love that stuff too. It makes it for a really rich tapestry,
it
for all the
does.
action to happen with,
It
and suddenly you've got
does.
characters in battle that have hated each other forever, or that end up becoming really good friends, even if they're from really, or suddenly realizing. I love it when characters realize they've got parallel situations in their lives, and I don't know, just the friendship and also banter. I absolutely love banter. Like, I've got
Yes.
a lot of banter between dragons and riders, and all of my dragons have different personalities. Um, so someone asked me that the other day. Do your dragons have different personalities? Like, oh yeah, there's snarky ones, there's regal ones, there's cheeky ones, playful ones. I had one that's really, really grumpy. In a kid's book I wrote, really grumpy dragon. He's alluded to in the series, so he might turn up at some stage too. Yeah, just lots of different dragons, all with different personalities, and they suit the writers. So that's always fun too, figuring it out.
That's cool.
I have a naming convention that whenever dragons and riders imprint, um, they take on a syllable of each other's names. So often the
Oh,
dragon will change
wow.
its name. So it's got a similar. So you've got Air Rob and Roberto. You've got Azara and Zarusha. Um, who else have you got? You've got Yanir and Cyan. So they all have a syllable that match. So that's a fun thing too when me and my readers are naming dragons. Is okay, this is the rider. Can you find a name with a syllable in it? So yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that, but now that's the way it is.
No, but that's very cool.
Yeah. Oh, in my world, I lived in Switzerland for 6 years, so the world is based a lot on, like, Switzerland,
Oh,
alpine with lakes and
I've been
sort of like
there. It's
yeah. Oh, have
beautiful.
you? Where did you
Yeah, I
go?
went to Geneva for a few
Mhm.
days when I was in college. That's unfortunately all I got to in Switzerland, but it was very
Mm,
beautiful.
and
It
you've got
was
all the
really,
old
really
old
cold. It was
cities.
April. It was freezing.
Would have been really cold. When I moved to Switzerland, I saw all these fur-lined boots come into the stores in October, and I was like, "Oh, they've got fancy trim on their boots, to make everything look lovely for winter." And by the time it got to December, I was wearing boots with fur insoles lined with fur. I had no idea it could get that cold. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
we had
I was there, and I was there for Easter, which is like I think it was the end of March, early April, and it
so it's
was
spring.
freezing. Yeah, it was freezing. That wind was whipping off the lake, and I took a train to the Chateau Chillon, I think it is,
Mm,
and just like it was so cold. It
yeah.
was so
Was there a lot of
beautiful, but it
snow?
was really cold.
Was there snow on the ground then?
No, there wasn't snow on the
Yeah.
ground when I was there, but it was cold enough that it could have been. It
Yeah,
did
it's nutty,
flurry
eh?
at one point.
Mm. Yeah, so I lived there for 6 years. So I did a lot of walking in the Alps, and I taught English for a while, and I worked in a squash centre, which was a very bizarre place to work. It was called Squash and Pub. So it had a pub.
Oh,
You walked in and
wow.
thought you were walking into an old English pub, and when you rounded the corner, there was a glass wall with a squash court behind it, and then a door, and like 9 more I think there were 9 in total squash courts going all the way down the back of this massive building. But it
That's
looked like an
cool.
old English pub with mahogany tables and lampshades and pictures of fox hunts, with gold gilded frames on the walls. It was the most bizarre place.
That's
But
so
yeah, I lived there.
weird.
Yeah, I lived there for 6 years. I went over there to paraglide because I used to paraglide. And in the end, I got there. I was, in my 20s. Yeah, just last week, like we said.
Yes, of course.
And yeah, I had an amazing time there, and had some amazing friends. But I didn't actually paraglide in Switzerland. It ended up that getting a paragliding license was going to cost me about $3,000 at the time, and I just ended up, I thought, oh well, I'll get a job, and it was really hard for me to get a job as a foreigner that paid well. So I'd come from a very lucrative job in New Zealand. And because I was an IT consultant and couldn't get that work in Switzerland for quite a while. So my paragliding dream sort of went out the window. By the time I got a really good job, I ended up getting a great job there after a few years. By the time I got a great job, I'd moved on and paragliding wasn't at the top of my list. But I have paraglided in New Zealand. And I think that's one of the reasons I write about dragons, because when you're up there soaring in the sky, miles up above the sea and the grass, right? Well, the sea's scary. I paraglided over the sea a little bit, but I always made sure I went back inland because who wants to have a crash landing into the sea, right?
Right.
But scary. And I have heard of a
It's
couple of people going down in
painful.
the ocean.
It's
Yeah,
painful. The higher you are, the harder, like, water. I forget what I looked this up once because I needed it for a book. But yeah, it depending on how high you are, there's a certain point, like, where the water is not it's not a soft landing. At a certain point, it's like hitting concrete.
it
Um,
is.
it can
Yeah.
break you, and
Breaks
then
your
you
bones and
drown.
things because of the force. Yeah. And so, but that whole sensation of soaring up above the world, it's so peaceful.
Oh,
Like when you're
wow.
down at world level, down in the grass or in the city, it's all, there's a lot of noise around you. And
Mm,
when you're up higher, you might hear the occasional bird. You may hear the sea like far off down below, this distant sort of of the tide coming in, but it is so peaceful. It's the most amazing sensation. And so I think that's really what it feels like to be a bird or to be a dragon. And so when I write my books, I try and bring a lot of that visual and sensory stuff onto the page, so that as people read, they experience. So I eliminate a lot of unnecessary language and clutter language to make it feel like a really tight experience, like they're actually experiencing what they read. And I've had readers that have said that, it's like a movie in my mind, or I engage all 5 senses, or things like, it feels like they're there when they read it. And that's my ultimate aim every time I write a book, is to give readers a cinematic experience, so they feel as if they're actually on the dragon, riding the dragon, having, an amazing experience.
that's so cool.
Mm.
I have no idea if mine are cinematic. I hope they are, but I don't know.
It's hard to tell. So I think one of the tricks is to engage all the senses. So you talk, you write about what they smell, and instead of saying, "Oh,
I always
Sean,"
leave the smell out because I have
yeah,
horrible allergies, so I can never smell anything. So, like,
right,
I forget that, like, other people can actually smell things,
yeah,
and
yeah. No, I
because
get
I
that.
spend most of my life basically barely being able to smell anything, like, hearing, like, descriptions of way things smell, I'm like, "I have no
That
idea
doesn't
what
do
you're
it for you.
talking
Yeah.
about."
So, the smell, the taste, the feel, the emotional sensations they're feeling. So when my characters have emotions, I sometimes slip in a word like excited or whatever, but very rarely. I very rarely show that. I just show what they're feeling in their bodies, because most of our emotions, you can actually sense them through, your fists tighten or your throat gets tight when you try not to cry, or your eyes sting. Or so I don't say, he felt tears sting his eyes. I'll just go straight for direct language. His eyes stung. Bang. So you actually get the feeling, not the description of what they're feeling. Like if someone's nervous, oh, he was nervous, there were butterflies churning in his stomach. I don't use that extra layer of nervous. I'm just like, a dragonette flipped over in his stomach, or something somersaulted, or, and just so it really feels like you're directly experiencing what the character experiences. And I think that's what my readers enjoy.
Yeah, I do
They
that
enjoy
too.
that. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
That
good.
with the smell. It has to really
The
smell
taste.
bad, like a, oh, I'm not gonna go there, and I can insult the
No,
city.
don't go there. Yeah. That's so
But
interesting because,
that strong urine smell that I
yeah,
can.
yeah, I do. Yeah, that whole nitric acid overload. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and there's things like, some smells coat your tongue when you smell them, or you smell them, you
Mhm.
taste them at the back of your throat. So I try and get all of that visual, that visceral stuff in, so that people can actually experience it. But yeah, so that's Riders of Fire, coming out in the omnibus and faux leather, and the first 3 books. And then hopefully, if this Kickstarter is successful and funds well, then we'll do the next 3 books next year in another omnibus. And then there's Riders of Fire Dragon Masters as well, which is sort of coming out in perpetuity. I've run a Kickstarter before, which funded successfully and did really well, and that was for my Dragon Shifters Horde series. Those are really pretty books. We were able to take, a simple paperback with sort of like an urban fantasy and elemental power theme, and wrap it in, make beautiful covers where you took all the words off and put it underneath on the case laminate, and then have a gorgeous symbol cover sort of wrapping around over the top.
Oh, that's
And
pretty.
that Kickstarter was, for those of you on Spotify, you can't see them, you'll have to nip over to YouTube. And so those 3 covers, they came out really well. I was very, very pleased with how they looked. So it's a bit hard to see them on the screen, probably. I don't know, my glasses on, so everything's a bit blurry, but otherwise they reflect in the camera. And then there's the last one, which is one of my favorites too. So those are available at thesignedbookshop.com. Angela Ford runs a bookstore for special editions. So if your Kickstarter is successful, you might be able to put some of those in there. And then we have swag packs. Yeah, we have swag packs that go with them. Like, we've got pretty postcards and bookmarks, and we develop, which my readers love, are character cards, which are a little bit like they've got the names of the characters, a picture of them, and a bunch of interesting facts about them, and then a ridiculous quote from each of them. So so Snow likes this guy called Zephyr, and she's like, so your name is really Zephyr, as in Ford Zephyr? Are you sure you want to dance, not drive? That's her quote. Some silly things. And then you've got Red, her sister, who's a real party animal, and she says, I don't care about a date, I just want to dance, because her and her sister are sneaking out at night. And then you've got, there's all sorts of funny little bits and pieces on those cards, so they're quite fun. With my Riders of Fire Kickstarter, we're sort of doing less swag and focusing more on the actual book. We have cute little stickers for Dragon Shifters Horde available too, so the symbols on the stickers, and they're in the signed bookshop. But with the Riders of Fire one, we're not going to do too much swag. There'll be extra stuff people can add as an add-on if they want it behind the backer wall. So if they choose to get an omnibus or a bookmark, we've got beautiful gold dragon foil bookmarks.
Oh,
I was
wow.
just, when the artist presented me with them, I was like, wow, it's just like a massive dragon covering the back of the bookmark, and then a little bit of, the series name on the front. She's just done a stunning job of those. I was absolutely thrilled with them. It should be quite exciting. But I think the exciting thing for me is seeing whether we can fund, like you, seeing whether we can fund some additional art and making the sorry, I should probably say that with an American accent. Art. We say art. I even tried to say it nicely and it didn't work, right? Art. Art. So fund some additional images to go in the book. That would be really great. And I think my readers are quite excited about that. So there's one other thing I haven't mentioned, which I meant to mention near the beginning of the podcast, and that's the fact that I'm a member of the Action Fantasy Book Club. So if you go to actionfantasybookclub.com, you can get a free fantasy book each month of the year until the end of 2023. And you'll be signed up to all of the participating authors' newsletters, but you actually get a free book a month. And it's a book that's never been free anywhere before. So I have written my own brand new standalone novel, a story of Lars, who's the head of the Dragon Council in Azara's series. And you see him here and he pops up in Master Mage. He's a harpist who's been invited to come play the harp at the Dragon Mage's wedding. And you see here in Amethyst Dragon, you see how he plays the harp, how he gets his reputation, how he goes there and then actually imprints with an amethyst dragon.
Oh, wow.
And that's a really romantic story. So the whole story is based on one line from Azara or one scene from Riders of Fire where Azara's in trouble and Lars goes down to reprimand someone who's tried to kill her. He goes down into the dungeons to sort of have a word with this woman who knows his worst secret. And he figures out he confided something to his cousin, and that's his cousin's daughter.
Oh, wow.
The cousin let his worst secret slip. And so the entire book is based on, I know this about you. And the entire book for Amethyst Dragon is based on that terrible secret that she let slip. So it's quite a romantic story. It's a sweet one. But yeah, so that's available as a standalone from actionfantasybookclub.com if you go and sign up, and you'll get books from Zamil Akhtar and Angel Hayes until the end of the year, which is really cool. And then next year they'll have different roundup of authors participating. Yeah. Wow. I think we talked
Did
out?
Did we hit everything?
I'm trying to think. Let me put my glasses on and have a look at the notes.
Did we hit everything? Because we had like a whole bunch of things you wanted to hit in here. Like,
yep, we've talked all about Anakisha and the pirates and Yanir, the King's Rider. So those are the main, and Giddy, the Dragon Mage. So those are the main characters in the first.
We didn't hit. What's coming next? What are you writing now?
Goodness.
What are the next books that are coming out? I was like, wait, I know we haven't hit everything.
We haven't hit everything. I thought we had. Dragon Spy, Dragon Healer, Dragon Rider, and Dragon Master. Those are the last 4 books in the series. So Amethyst Dragon is only out for the Action Fantasy Book Club. So that's a brand new book that I will be launching soon. So but you can get it for free now if you sign up to the Action Fantasy Book Club. So that is the next thing coming out, but it's in a separate series. I've got a little series called Riders of Fire Dragon Riders, which is a riders at the end and the beginning of the title. But so there's Riders of Fire, then there's Riders of Fire Dragon Masters, which is the prequels, and then Riders of Fire Dragon Riders are little side stories of some of the main characters in the Dragon Master series or the Riders of Fire series and how they actually imprinted with their dragons. So I just thought they're sort of fun. There's Bronze Dragon and Silver Dragon, which are available free at my website. There's Ruby Dragon, which was originally a short story, but is about 10,000 words long. The other 2, Bronze Dragon and Silver Dragon, are novelettes. So they're sort of like little novellas. And then you've got Amethyst Dragon, which is a full-sized 80K novel, so it's 80,000 words, which is about 300 pages or something, I suppose.
80,000 is like, I guess it depends on like the size
how
of the
you
book.
form it.
So if it's like 9 by 6, that's like maybe 250.
Oh, my books are all 5 by 8s.
5 by 8. Yeah, it'd be about 300, I guess.
About 300,
pages.
yeah. So it ended up being a full-size novel, even though I was trying to write a novella,
No, 80, anything over 40,000 words, according to, what is it, the Science Fiction Writers of America? Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America?
I think it's 50, isn't it 50? Over 50 is a novel, 45 is a novella.
No, it's over like 40 is a novel, apparently. Because all the Pulp Fiction novels, like from the turn of the century and stuff, they were only 40,000 words. They weren't
I remember
long.
looking up. Yeah, I looked up all those definitions to get novelette, which is what Bronze Dragon and Silver Dragon are, because they're about 18,000. But so there's a whole range of stuff to read. But and I really enjoyed just writing that side story. But when I was writing it, it was quite difficult to write Amethyst Dragon because Bronze Dragon and Silver Dragon happen within that time frame that book's spans about a year and a half, I think, Amethyst Dragon. And so Bronze Dragon and Silver Dragon each happened within that time frame. Dragon Spy, which is the next story I'm writing, happens within that time frame.
Oh, wow.
And then Dragon Healer starts before the end of the Amethyst Dragon book And because Lars is playing at the Master Mage's wedding, the Master Mage book, which is book 4, happens at the beginning. The end of that book is the beginning of, well, no, probably about a chunk of a way into Lars's book. So his
When are
book
these coming
spans,
out?
I know, as soon as I can write them, but
So 2024?
I was hoping, so Dragon Spy's up on pre-order for 2024. I was hoping to get it out this year, but now that I'm running a Kickstarter and I'm launching German translations all at the same time, which,
Oh,
I know I'm
wow.
mad. I'm not going to be able to get a lot of writing done in the next 6 weeks, but after that, probably I'll be writing it. So I'm hoping it'll be out. In January, but let's not make any promises, right? So at the moment, it's up for Valentine's Day. That's Dragon Spy, and then Dragon Healer will be after that. Dragon Master, which will be after that, and Dragon Rider, and then Dragon Master. So originally this series was going to stop 18 years before Azara's story starts, because Azara is 18 years old or 17 when her story starts. But what I've done is I've expanded the series so it goes up to right the night before Azara happens. So the
Wow.
entire series will just be one. You can, by the time, I always tell people to start with Riders of Fire because it's finished, right? So they can read that whole series and then they can come back, circle back to the prequels. But officially, by the time I finish this series, it'll be start at Anakisha's Dragon, because then you can go through chronologically and you can read about the ones in the Riders of Fire Dragon Riders series, the little side
Wow.
stories. You can read them as you go and just tuck them into where they're appropriate. Yeah. So it's going to be massive. Yeah. Huge. Probably
Wow.
spanned about
So
50
lots to
years in
look
the end, I think.
forward to.
Yeah. So there you go. That's it. Wow. Never a short answer, is there?
That's fine. That's fine. I expect essay answers when talking to authors.
Essay answers. That's funny. Yeah, so those are the things at the moment. Dragon Captain's just come out, which is, just came out a month ago, August. Yeah, so a little bit longer. No, about a month ago. Amethyst Dragon is coming out for the Action Fantasy Book Club, and I'll be launching that soon. I've yet to decide whether I put that exclusively on Amazon or launch it wider, because it's a standalone book. It can be read on its own across, so I'm sort of in the middle of considering that, or do a Kickstarter with it, because that could be a fun one for a special edition. And then there's Dragon Spy, Dragon Healer coming definitely, sort of first half of next year, hopefully. And the Kickstarter at the moment for the omnibus. So, and German translations, but that's not. Probably your readers don't read German. If they do, there'll be a sign-up page on my website soon, probably in the next week, for people who are interested in German books. But yeah, it's a lot of work
Wow.
being indie author, isn't it, Melinda? There's always so many balls to
It
juggle. There's
is.
so many routes you could go,
Yeah, I don't have translations.
No,
Working on
it's
audiobooks, because that's
yeah.
my thing. I love audiobooks. So
Yeah. I've got 3 audiobooks up. So this omnibus that we're launching on the Kickstarter has 3 audiobooks. They were Audible put those out. So at the moment they don't have plans to put out the 4th, which is a bit of a shame. So I'm looking into doing that. But I was trying to do all 3 things this year.
wow.
Write, launch Kickstarters and do the translations. And a friend of mine said, why don't you just put one of them off for the year after? Because you should only be doing one of these things a year. It's going to be too much work.
Right.
But
I mean, I don't know how people do it. I've got the Kickstarter right now and I'm writing a trilogy.
yeah, it's crazy. It's so much work. But, we do
Yeah.
it because we love our readers and we want to give them opportunities. I speak German fluently. I have not
Oh,
translated the books. I had a proper, German person who's got German as a mother tongue translate them. And she makes a living off translating. That's her business. So it was not cheap to get them done. But I really wanted to reach that part of the market because the books are inspired by European culture, and I think they're probably going to appeal to those readers as well. So, and I have had German readers write to me and say, I really love these. Are you going to get translations? I'd like to give them to my friends, but they don't read in English. So I'm like, okay,
oh
it's probably time to
wow.
do this. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
reading
so
in a foreign
cool.
language is challenging. Like I've read books in German, read novels and things and enjoyed them, but it's sort of like it's a bit
I
more work than reading
I
in your
know
own language.
exactly how hard it is.
Yeah. So do
It took
you speak another language?
I used to, I don't anymore. Because I don't have anywhere to practice it or anything. But
So
I
was it
did
Spanish
take
or?
No, I took French in school because
Ah,
Canada's
c'est
so
joli.
far away. So I took
That's
French
why you
from
went to
like
Geneva, to Genève.
well, No, a friend had like, hey, let's go to Geneva. And they were going, and they're like, you want to come? And they had figured out the whole. We were studying in London, and they already mapped out how they were going to do it. And they were like, I don't want to go by myself. You want to come? And I was like, sure.
Yeah, it's
You've
easy to
done all
join
the
in on a
hard
fully
work
formed
of
plan.
planning how we get there from here, and not pay an arm, leg, and a foot to do
Yeah.
it. And so I went. So, but but Geneva's not the French speaking part. So it
Yeah,
didn't help
Geneva's
me.
no, Geneva's a French speaking part.
Was it? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
They didn't like my
Oh,
French.
they don't like people with foreign accents. It's very weird. So,
Yeah, and I had a Quebecois accent because my French teacher was from Quebec, and I didn't realize that
right.
until I was
No.
in Belgium using the French, and they were like,
Are you
they're
from
like, they kept
Quebec?
asking me if I was Canadian. I was like, why are they asking me this?
Yeah, and that's why.
Then
So I
I
met
finally asked, and they're like, oh, because you speak with a Quebecois accent, and I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, I had no idea.
yeah, it's so funny. And
But it
and
makes
I
sense. Quebec is like 5 hours away or something.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it's they do, like, Quebec has a different accent, so I have when I speak German, I have a Swiss accent. I have a
Oh,
Swiss Kiwi
makes
accent. It
sense.
is absolutely hilarious. So, most Germans think I'm Swiss. They always say to me, "Are you Swiss?" Because I Swiss do a lot of that when they speak.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. So
quite
you're like, well, I did
hilarious.
live there.
Yeah, they're very guttural. And, and I speak fluent Swiss German, like my Swiss, which is quite unusual for people to learn the Swiss German dialect, but I speak fluent Swiss German. And then I speak German, but it's never quite grammatically correct because even the Swiss German grammar is very different to German grammar. And
Really?
yeah, even oh, what do you call them? I can't think. The articles have genders, and some of those are
Oh,
switched. Not all of them. There's just a few in Swiss German that are switched. They're the opposite to what they are in German. So it's been, that was interesting. So me actually translating something would have been, a nightmare. But me being able to read a translation, understand it, and make suggestions to the translator. Could we use this word there or that word there? Or how would you do this? Has been a really, really interesting process. But it's taken a bit of time because,
you have to read
you know,
them.
yeah, yeah. And of course, there's been an official proofreader, a German proofreader, read them, and so and she just loves the book. She's like, "Oh my god, you made me cry! When's the next one going to be ready?" So I'm quite excited about launching those too. But we weren't going to talk about that today.
No, that's fine. It's all about the books, so I'm fine with that. But
Yeah, that's
that's
cool.
so cool.
Mm.
Yeah, translation's not something I'm into at the moment.
No, and it's quite an expensive road to go. I mean, there are people using AI for translation, but then it takes a lot of fixing to get it right afterwards. So you still got to employ a
Ah,
translator to go
yeah,
look through it. So,
yeah.
translation's not an easy process. And then you've got to learn how to market in a different market, like
Mm.
the tricks and techniques that work, not tricks, but, the techniques that you learn about selling your books in an English speaking market are very different
And the
to
covers
a
are
German
very
speaking market.
different for
Mhm.
German books. It's a
I've
totally
been
different
told
cover
by Germans
styles.
yeah, I've been told by Germans that my cover should be fine, so I'm hoping they're right.
Because I've seen, like, German translations of books, like, that I've l loved, and, like, they're very different than the covers in
Mhm.
the US market.
I've got to tell you something funny. So, British covers are very different to American covers. So when Divergent, the Veronica Roth
Yes.
young adult series, when Divergent came out, I really wanted to, I read a friend's copy or something. I thought, right, I've got to buy these books. I love them. So I went online to Amazon. I saw these amazing covers, and then I went into the New Zealand bookstores to find the books, and I couldn't find them. And then I looked again, and I found them, and they had like this purple cover with a red girl on it or something, and like it was drawn. It was like an outline,
Oh,
and you
wow.
guys had these flamey, fiery, amazing
Mm.
looking covers that just said fantasy to me. And these other books sort of said contemporary to me. And so I ordered so many books off Amazon just to get the American covers. I would order them in, get them shipped to New Zealand, and people would say, "Oh, where did you get that?" Because my friends would see them and love the American covers. So I don't know why they thought New Zealanders would like the British looking covers. And I
I don't
personally
know.
don't see how the British like those covers. I mean, I know a lot of British people who are fantasy readers who would love the American covers. So sometimes I don't know if the publishers have it right with the covers, but they do. They're big. They put a lot of money into market research. They
Right,
probably
right.
do. But maybe making the covers appeal to fans who aren't just fantasy or something like that.
That's what I think. They're trying to appeal to a wider audience.
To all young adults, yeah,
Yeah.
except that the covers were insipid and boring.
I
Sorry,
mean,
Veronica.
yeah. I
I
lived in
love the
London
American.
for
Yeah,
5
that's right.
months when I was in
Mhm.
college, and I went into many bookstores, and the covers are very different.
Yeah, you're very different. So you're being very polite. You're saying very different. You didn't say,
Yeah,
"Oh,
I
the covers
decided I'd
suck."
wait till I got back
Yeah.
to the US to buy them, because at that point, the exchange rate was not good.
Oh, yeah,
It was like,
gosh.
Just not gonna buy any books till we go back to New York, and then we can get all the books we want, because I can just go downtown to the Strand, which is just giant bookstore, and just
Yeah.
find literally everything.
Isn't that ironic that you lived in London and yet your bookstore in the States is called The Strand, which is a
Mhm.
popular London location?
It's so hard to it's so big and so overwhelming with, like, the books, that you have to know exactly what you want going in. It is Otherwise, you will be there forever and never find anything.
You'll be in a book coma just
It's
staring at
just
them.
it's so overwhelmingly gigantic. Like, I like the smaller bookstores better. They're a little more my speed. They may not have
Okay.
everything, but you can actually you can actually browse the smaller books. So you cannot browse the Strand. It is
Yeah.
multiple I can't remember how many floors it is, but it's just
Wow.
there's so many books.
Yeah. I feel like that's what it's getting like on Amazon too. There are so many books, and just finding what you like is
Mm.
so I guess, like for me, um, when ChatGPT came out, I put in a question. I was like, what are the major tropes in Dragon Rider fantasy? And bang, it came up with a list of, these are the common tropes. And I'm like, are there any more? And it came up with very similar ones to the first ones. And I thought it was really interesting because I was able to go down that list and tick off every single one of them and go, yep, I've nailed my genre. I've got all the things that readers of Dragon Rider fantasy love. The strong imprinting bond, all the different things that they had listed. And I was really thrilled. I was like, yes. But I already knew that because my readers had told me that they loved all those important things um, in my books. And I think that's what it's about, Melinda. It's about finding the people that love, like for your books, the
Mm.
magic, the found family, the sense of action and adventure, all of those things. It's about including those things in your book so that you can find the readers who will love your story. Not every book is for every reader,
That's
and
true.
not every reader is for every book. So
That's
it's about,
true.
it's about us as authors knowing
Mhm.
what we love to write, what our readers love to read, and being able to deliver that to them. And in the case of both of our Kickstarters, being able to at some stage put it into pretty packaging that
Yes.
lifts a book to another level and gives our readers something more. Because I know that loyal readers who've followed me for the last 5 years, are really keen on these new volumes, that they look exciting, and that brings the world to life in a new way when you're able to get them illustrated or have
Mm.
different covers or have a hardback versus a paperback. So yeah.
I want, like, a illustrated version with, like, just a two-color spread of, like, this my favorite, like, character one of my favorite characters, who's a just giant magical tree.
Oh,
But, yeah,
neat.
I want that. I don't currently have that,
Mm.
but maybe
Well, see
maybe
how your
someday.
Kickstarter goes, and
Yeah.
I think there's also value in, I've got a couple of ideas of what illustrations I want in the book, but I'm also gonna poll my readers and see what they want, and see what they'd like to have included when we get to that phase. We're not quite there yet. My Kickstarter campaign just kicked off
Mm.
yesterday, so
I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one who wants, like, a beautiful full color illustration of the queen of all
yeah,
trees.
yeah.
She's a favorite from
Is she
what I hear.
sentient?
Yes,
Mm.
very. She's the queen of their country.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I've got your books on my Kindle, I just haven't got to them yet, and I think that's another thing, as authors, we start writing because we loved reading, and then as writing takes over our lives and it becomes a business and you get busier, you have less time to read even though you still really enjoy reading, and so my Kindle is just stuffed full, and friends bring out new books, and I'm like, "Oh, I'll get that one too."
Yeah, my
And
Kindle's
one
pretty
one day I'll
stuffed, but
retire and read them all. Yeah.
I do still read a lot.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
do read, but I just
Yeah.
don't get as much time to read as I'd like. It's usually really late at night.
Yeah, I listen to the audiobooks because I work full time. So I'm commuting 3 days. So I put on the audiobooks, or I have Google Play has this great thing where it'll read to me so that I can keep hearing the story until I can get
Mm,
back to reading it again in the interface. It's an
mm,
AI voice, but who cares? Like I can keep listening to the story while I'm
mm.
driving when I can't actually physically read the ebook,
Okay,
you
that's quite
know?
cool. I haven't tried that.
Yeah,
So
so I
is
get
that when you
through.
buy a book on Google Play, it will do that for you?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Most of my books I buy on Amazon. So.
Yeah, it's just like it's a like you can also do it with Amazon with the Kindle app through with using the Alexa thing, but
Mm,
it doesn't always work right. It skips around. I have a lot of problems with it.
mm.
So I generally buy all my books from Google Play, all the
Oh, that's
ebooks.
interesting.
Because it
Yeah.
doesn't have any issues and it's always and I love the fact that like I can my eyes get too tired and I can't continue reading the ebook, that I can just ask
Mhm.
it. It will just read it to me so that I can keep because sometimes I want more of the story. I don't want to put it down, but the eyes are like
Yeah,
I have
your
a lot of
eyes are too
trouble with my
tired.
eyes and
Yeah.
like I just have to, I have to rest them. I have to not look at screens, but I want to know what happens. Um yeah, I'm reading a couple indie authors right now, and I need to know what happens. So
Yeah, I'm reading like 4 different indie authors at once, and I don't know how that happened, but one was on an audiobook, another one I started reading for the Indie Fantasy Challenge, one of Andy
mm,
Pelican's, big fat, dark blade assassin, and then at some stage, I downloaded some more books and it ended up opening, so I don't normally read books all together, so I'm listening to 2 different audiobooks at once. I'm reading 3 different books, and I just go, "Oh, what's my mood today?" And I flick back to the dark one or over to the romantic one, or and
oh,
they're
that's
all indie
cool.
fantasy books, so that's quite cool. Yeah, I'm reading Angel Hayes's, Jeff Koenig's, Andy Pelican's, and Alicia Klapik. I've just finished one of hers too, and that was in a slightly different genre than what she had been writing. So it's just interesting to see what people are up to and reading them. But
Yeah,
often I read outside of fantasy, to be honest.
same.
Sometimes I read contemporary books just to have a break from fantasy, but I also love reading within my genre. So yeah, but it's
I
just
read.
I have
Yeah.
just so many books to get to. But I guess everyone's in the same position. It's
Mm.
like all the groceries in your pantry. You're not going to eat all of them every day. You're just going to dip in and get what you need at the time.
Let's
So
not talk about
yeah.
groceries. It's I need the rain to stop coming down
Oh,
in
is your pantry
sheets
bare?
so I can go. Yeah, yeah. I was looking at it. I was like, okay. I needed to.
Okay,
I just needed to. It's coming down. It was coming down so hard
bucketing.
today that it
Mm,
was like a gray out. Like in this, if it's snowing too hard, you get that white out. This was a gray
mm.
out. Same
Yeah, no, I
effect, but it
get
was not
greyouts.
snow. It was rain, and I could
Yeah.
not see the building across from my apartment building
Wow.
because it
That
was
must be
just
pretty heavy.
sheets of rain.
So how does a New York system handle that much rain? I know they had issues with flooding and things in Germany
Oh,
because
it's
the area was so built up that the water couldn't get it. The rivers rose and it just went right through Germany, through some of the, cities.
Oh, well, New York City is actually below sea level, so
Mm,
it does not handle it well. Certain
mm,
subways, the subway is, way below ground, so that
yeah,
floods. And there's flooding all in like the most of the city is low lying,
yeah.
so a lot of that floods. Where I am at, which is north of the city, the water is just deep, deep puddles,
Mm,
and like it's just erodes things. I mean, right where I'm at, it's sort of hill, so it's all
mm,
running into the Hudson River,
mm.
which will swell up and may give the Hudson Line, which is the Metro North train line that stops, in
May
the
give
town
it
that I live
grief.
in.
Yeah.
It's so close to the river that, like, with all the rain we've been getting, like, I'm so glad I'm not commuting to New York City because
Mm,
it can flood the tracks, and the tracks have gotten flooded if the Hudson River comes up too high. So we've had so much rain in the past month, like. I feel like I'm living in Florida. There's just so much rain. It
mm,
rains for days, like, which is not normal. Like, we do get a lot of rain, but it's usually spread out. Like, you have days of sunshine, then you have your rainy day, days of sunshine. We've had just 3 or 4 days of rain, like, every week. It's been
mm.
wild.
So I live on a South Pacific island, right? It's quite a big island, but New
Yeah.
Zealand's comprised of 3 main islands and a bunch of little wee ones. And we are very subject to weather changes. So in winter, I can walk around in a t-shirt on some days because it's calm and there's no wind, which is very rare in
Wow.
the city I live in. And it's not that cold. But also in summer, it can be like, this is spring, and 2 weeks ago it was hot and everyone was walking around in t-shirts with sandals on, or, and now suddenly everybody's rugged up and I've got my ski jacket and scarf on because it's freezing cold and it's been rainy for a week again. So we get a
Oh,
lot of that.
wow.
We get weather in batches. So the weather will come out from Australia sometimes. It comes over from Australia and across the ocean, and then it hits New Zealand. Sometimes when it hits a mountain range in the South Island, that will break up all the clouds, and then they'll have sunnier weather over the other side of the South Island. But yeah, so we tend to be very subject to weather patterns because we're a little country without a lot of landmass.
Oh,
But yeah, so
wow.
we're used to living like that with,
I
days of rain,
just
days of sun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I have to watch out for the hurricanes because
Yeah.
they come up the coast, and that's where I
Yeah, we
am.
have them here too.
Or the
Yeah, like I
storms come across in the wintertime, they come across from the northwest along the
oh,
jet
okay.
stream, and
Yeah.
that's where all of our snow comes from.
Yeah, because you're on the coast, your weather patterns are
Mhm.
probably a bit more similar to what ours are because we're not that far inland. Whereas
Oh,
people
yeah,
in the mid
it's
people in the center of the country, it's
yeah.
a little bit, well, it might not be more stable
I
because they
mean,
have
you
a
can
lot of
see
tornadoes and
you
stuff,
can
don't
see
they?
the weather coming too, like,
Mm.
that's the
Batten
some
down the
things.
hatches.
Yeah, because it's the hurricanes come up the coast, and some of them dissipate, and it's just a rainstorm. Some of them don't, and we get pretty badly hit. And some things come. You can get like if the weather's coming from California, you can see it days in advance.
Yeah. Mhm.
Then and then there's the Great Lakes that they go over, which they just pick up moisture and intensify.
Ah, oh, right.
um,
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
yeah. But, like, the
Mm.
10-day weather forecast, you look at it and you're like, "Oh, okay." And then, as you get closer, you're like, "Wait, 10 days ago, they said this was gonna be the weather, and now it's radically different."
Oh, ours is the same though. I was surprised. I always thought that was because New Zealand was so small and our land mass was small.
No,
So
I
we don't rely on weather forecasts that like we don't put a lot of stock in them. We go, oh yeah, so the weather's saying this for next week. Let's look 2 days out, because it
that's
really
what I end up
changes.
doing.
It's quite
Yeah,
changeable. Yeah.
because of that, because the jet stream is pulling things from across the country, and
Hmm.
then you have, like, the Atlantic Ocean, and things can come up the coast, and, like, yeah, it can get pretty wild.
Yeah.
And then in the winter time, it doesn't happen as much in the summer. The jet stream can dip and it can pull the like cold air down from the North Pole, and we can get very cold and
Mm.
very, yeah. Or the jet stream go the other direction and pull up the heat from Mexico. So yeah. I mean, you look 10 days, you're like, okay, so maybe this will be the weather. And then as you get closer, like it can, like this week, 10 days ago, it said it was going to be sunny this weekend. It is
Mm.
now, it says 4 days of rain, heavy rain.
So back to the grocery situation, I think we should send a dragon courier over to fill its saddlebags with groceries, haunch of goat, a
Mm,
bit of mead,
yeah, I was like looking at the
and
thing. I
drop it
was
at
like,
your
if
door.
yeah, if the rain doesn't like slacken enough that like I don't, because it's not warm, it's cool. It's like I don't want to
Mm.
get soaked leaving my house to my apartment to go to get groceries. Like if it's slackens enough where like an umbrella will keep you sort of dry, okay, you
You
know.
are a brave woman. We cannot use umbrellas in Wellington because it is so windy.
Oh,
I mean, you always see someone walking down the road with an umbrella and everyone shakes their head and laughs. And sort of three
oh,
minutes later, their umbrella's inside out or it's taken off somewhere in
that's
the.
that's
It,
like the smaller city that I work in. The wind there is terrible.
mm.
It just blows the yeah, I've had many umbrellas destroyed by that place.
So this
But
place used to be called Windy Wellington, and there
oh
was a radio
wow.
station called Radio Windy. And then the city council decided in the 90s that they wanted to, or maybe early 2000s, they wanted to rebrand the city. And we got named the coolest little capital in the world by some international, I can't remember who did it, but so it's now called the coolest little capital in the world, and it's called absolutely positively Wellington. And we now
But you
have
guys have
wind.
Hobbiton, and they filmed
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Lord of
Oh
the
yeah.
Rings in New Zealand,
So
so,
yeah,
like,
I
I
have I have
understand, like, the coolest capital reference.
yeah, so I have I personally, we have Smaug at the airport and the eagles with Gandalf flying on them just at the airport. And
Oh, I wanna
Wellington's a
see
tiny
that.
city. From where I live really close to the edge of the city, and my house is surrounded by trees. and there's like a reserve around that goes around the city called the Town Belt, and it is a swathe of land that nobody is allowed to build on. So you feel like I had a friend from Britain who used to say it feels like Wellingtonians are just camping in the middle of, like
That's cool.
even from the harbour, you look up and you
Yeah.
see all these trees among the houses, your houses among the trees. And he said, it just looks like these people have come and put houses down and they're camping and they're going to go away tomorrow, which is quite
That's
funny.
wild.
But it's
I want to
8 minutes
visit.
drive. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
8 minutes drive to the airport. I'm 3 minutes from downtown, hub of downtown, in my car, not walking. By dragon, I'd only be a minute or two, right?
Wow.
You know,
We're not
unless
going
there's
to
a
talk
bit of,
about how far it is for me to the
yeah,
with mass
unless there's a bit of
transit, it can take
traffic.
almost 2 hours.
Yeah, unless there's a bit of traffic, and then it might take me 6 or 7 minutes. I get really impatient when there's traffic. So it's a Wellington is a funny place. It can, if you're going on the motorway, which is your equivalent of a freeway. If you're going on the motorway to get further out to the other parts of Wellington, then it can take a little bit longer. But I'm right near the heart of the city, so the airport is closed. Hobbiton's up in Hamilton, which is sort of 7
Yes.
hours drive away,
I'm
or
going to
not
visit
Hamilton,
that
Waikato.
someday.
Oh, we went with Craig Martell in January.
Oh,
So
that's
Craig
so cool.
Martell, who runs the 20 Books
Yes.
organization for authors, which is all about educating authors for marketing. That's just for your readers. He runs little conferences around the world, and he was coming down to New Zealand. So he was coming to Australia to visit his son and grandkids. So he stopped in New Zealand, and we all went to Hobbiton together, and we ran an authors conference for a day. And I was one of the keynote speakers, which was very cool, along with a couple of friends of mine. Because New Zealand's tiny, we all know each other. Like, we all know people who've worked on Lord of the Rings or who have acted in the movies.
I'm going to visit one of these days. That's my dream, is to go and visit. But it's like, it's so expensive and it's such a long way from New York.
Tell me about it. Every time I've gone to the States, it's like, whew, there goes, it cost me $5,000 to get there and back or something crazy. Yeah, by the time you stay a couple of weeks. And so it's it's an expensive business living down in this beautiful little part of the South Pacific. But look, I'm thinking your readers might have listened long enough, because we've been chatting for a while.
Oh, yes. We have.
And it's probably getting close to your bedtime, because I know it's late there.
Yeah, it's almost 11 p.m. here. So.
Yeah, so let the dragons roar, let the magic fly, and let your wonderful 4.5-year-old protege in your books and Cursebreaker have lots of fun. Yeah, I've got to go read those now. I've had some of your books downloaded for ages. I just haven't got.
Oh,
them,
really?
so I'm going to have to do that. Yeah. Like I think back in 2018. When I first
I've revised and redone like some of them so many times. Like,
yeah,
I can't stop tinkering with them. The characters complain about that all the time.
I bet they do.
But
it does mean things are always fresh for your readers, though, which is good.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so. I've written 21 books in that world.
Wow. Yeah, I've got 22 now. Because I've got a bunch of kids' books.
I didn't publish the latest yet. That one's a little bit different than the others.
Yeah, and I have an urban fantasy that I wrote back in 2015 that I'm dying to publish, and I even have the most stunning cover for it. But I have to finish these books first, otherwise I'll dive off into another world and never get done.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
that's
it's just
true.
Yeah,
I only write epic fantasy. There's nothing else. It's all epic fantasy. I have a dragon story that I wrote like 10 years ago that I keep saying I'm going to go back to and finish, but dragon riders and all of that, but I have not gotten that. I will get there eventually.
That sounds like lots of fun. Right up my alley.
Yeah, I'll get there. I wrote it after like reading the Pern books. So like
I devoured those. I've devoured those many times over as a kid, and then again as an adult. And then I loved Aragon when it came out. And I think Pern gave me my first love of dragons. Yeah.
Never read Aragon.
Yeah.
It wasn't the right age when it came out, so it didn't appeal to me.
Yeah. I read it as an adult. I've even got a German copy here somewhere. I found a German copy and bought it. I was like, wow, I'll take that. Yeah. It was down here in New Zealand somewhere. So yeah, I can't remember where I got it. Picked it up.
Yeah, I've not read it. Yeah. All right. Any last words before we wrap? Because I'm getting the high winds warning, so I want to get off before that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I don't want to lose Wi-Fi.
No, I'm happy to hop off
a bit of a storm today.
So I just hope that all of your listeners out there have found this entertaining, that they go and look at eileenmuellerauthor.com and grab my free books, Bronze Dragon, Silver Dragon, and Drucky Twins, which is for the Urban Fantasy Dragon Shifters Horde series. And Bronze Dragon and Silver Dragon are those, independent ones we've talked about, the standalone Dragon Rider stories. I hope that they go and support you in your Kickstarter. Look it up, and then you get those beautiful volumes, published. That would be really lovely. How many days have you got till your Kickstarter ends?
I think 14. It ends on October 14th at 10:56 a.m. Eastern time. I didn't know that you could set the time that it ends, so that's why it ends at a weird time. I put the recommendation was run it for 17 days, so I set that, and then I kicked it off, and then I found out later that I could have set a time. So I'm sorry that it's an awkward time. I didn't know.
Yeah, that is an awkward time. So that makes it hard because people in Pacific time haven't gotten up yet. But you will be capturing some of the British market then, probably. So, or some of the British readers will, but that's when it finishes. The point is that you need people to get in and support it before it finishes. So yeah, and timing's timing. It happens when you run your next one. You can set an evening time or something so people are home from work and have a chance.
Now I know. Next time I think I'm gonna set it for midnight or something.
Traps for young players. Yeah.
Yeah. If there's a next time, I'm not sure we're gonna do this again.
See how you go. It's a lot of work. See if your readers enjoy it.
Yeah, I don't like holding books. Usually I finish it, it gets back from the editor, and I immediately hit publish. I'm like, I might do a short pre-order just to get all the links, because my books are wide, so that I can have all the links for everybody. So when it goes live, it's live for everybody at the same time, because when you publish wide, some places publish faster than others. And I guess to be like...
Need to line up all your ducks.
So that tends to be it. So I don't know. I think I might just publish. I think I'm gonna finish the trilogy that I'm writing and then just publish the whole thing. It's all that was. I'm not.
Yeah, that's fun.
I'm not good at
It's nice when you can publish a trilogy all at once, because your readers get to read one after the other and they don't have to wait. But I'm a slow writer. When I write my first drafts, they come out nearly finished. There's usually a few things I have to tweak, and of course they get edited, by me and by others. So, but I'm a bit slower as I write. But then when I'm done, it's a pretty fast process to then get it, up and ready for people. Amethyst Dragon has been an exception, actually. I wrote that in a month, and that was pretty full on. I mean, I do write my books in 6 to 8 weeks, but in between, but then you don't see me. I disappear from everywhere, and I dive in and I write like
I
crazy.
take about 10 to 12 weeks to write a book, because I work full time.
But you're working too, But anyway, so it's been wonderful to chat.
Yes.
I've enjoyed talking to you. I hope your Kickstarter goes well. Hope mine goes well. I hope that people have found all this interesting trivia about New Zealand and Kiwis and kiwi fruit and high winds.
Loved it.
And what I meant to say was that our city in Wellington has wind sculptures now to celebrate the wind. So there are some that light up when with the wind's kinetic energy, if that's the right word. But they light up with different lights when it's really windy, and with less lights when it's not. There's a big one we call a carrot, which is I always forget the technical name for it's a massive lever that measures how windy it is and tips in the wind. There's all sorts of blocks that spin, and there's lots of different wind sculptures to celebrate the wind. And now our radio station is no longer called Radio Windy, it's now called The Breeze.
That's cute. That's cute. And the city of New Rochelle, maybe you need to get some wind sculptures. The wind downtown is crazy. It can blow you across the street on a windy day. That's happened to me before. That strong.
We've had wind
you
sink.
Need to get some wind sculptures.
If anyone's listening.
And
we've had the wind sink a ship, through creating storms and stuff. So that was back in the 60s. Yeah. And one of my friends was a baby on that ship, and it was actually rescued. He was rescued and survived. So
wow.
He's got a little bit of it.
Survived.
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah. So lots of crazy stuff we've covered today. But the main thing is that fantasy rocks.
Yes,
having fun.
Does.
We've got a couple of Kickstarters up. And that people can get a free book at the actionfantasybookclub.com. And go check out Riders of Fire and Cursebreaker and all the different editions, and have fun reading them.
Yeah, and all the links are going to be in the show notes of the description, and any links that I don't have right now when this publishes, I will get. I will hunt her down and get them. I know where she is on social media. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been another episode of Fantasy Lore and More, and today we had Eileen Mueller. Did I get it right?
Yep.
Yes. And we'll be back soon with another fantasy off and another fantasy book. Thank you so much. Have a great day or a great night, depending on where you are.